So recently, a game called Monster Hunter Wilds just released, and I decided that I would play it for 7 days since I have never played a single Monster Hunter in my entire life. And I wanted to see if Monster Hunter Wilds was actually a good game, not only for newer players like myself, but I also wanted to see if the game was also good for the Monster Hunter veterans as well. With that being said, I also asked one of my buddies who has played almost every single Monster Hunter, starting from Monster Hunter 3 all the way to the latest installment, Monster Hunter Wilds, to join me and give his thoughts on the game as well. So on March 4th, I opened the game for the first time. Also, if you want to catch any of this content live, I stream every day at 7 p.m. CST, so come stop by and say hello or give me tips on the game I'm playing. Anyways, after I opened the game, I was able to see a quick sneak peek at a really cool monster while some old guy tells a kid to run away before shoving him into a hole and covering him with a rock, so the child has no choice but to run away. But that's unimportant because we cut to a cool skyship because ships that can fly are 10 million times cooler than some kid running. And for some reason, instead of being underground, he's now in the desert where he unfortunately died. So we take him onto our flying ship and I get met with my first boss of the entire game, the character creation screen. When I tell you I spent a long time making my character, I mean it. I spent almost an hour and a half browsing through all the options until I eventually landed on something I thought looked good. But this character looks really familiar somehow and I just can't seem to put my— oh my god!
I couldn't wait for you to come and clear the cupboard.
Finally, after a really long time, I was able to finish customizing my character and begin the game, where we talk to this really ancient old guy with a book who tells us to help out the strange kid who died in the desert named Nada. We also get to meet a couple other characters named Gemma and All Might before we spot these weird sandworm things swarming a little girl on some weird velociraptor looking thing. And since I'm the coolest, most awesomest person on this planet, I had to save her, and what better way than to jump onto my own velociraptor thingamajiggy. After getting a real close look at the sand, we were able to mount the bird so we could chase after the girl, which we were able to use this grappling hook thing to collect items to scare off the worms, which did allow us to save the girl, who then told us her older brother was in danger. So after a useless questionnaire that gave me a weapon I wasn't really interested in using, I grabbed myself the dual blades and made my way to save the young girl's brother. We look around and finally find the person we're looking for, who is currently being licked by a weird looking frog thing called the Chatacabra, which, since we are the main character, we do some weird thing with this spiky plant, which draws the Chatacabra's attention onto us, and now I get to fight my first boss for real. And honestly, even though I wasn't really good at fighting, and I definitely missed the monster a lot more than I hit it, I felt really cool when I hit a wound and turned into Captain Levi from Attack on Titan. After what felt like forever, I finally killed the Chatacabra and collected a bunch of items before finding the dude I just saved, who invites us to his village. But before we go there, we decide to head back to our base camp where we talk to all our guildmates before exploring the wildlife. Ah, so relaxing. Oh, look at that thing. Oh, and that thing too. Whatever it is. Anyways, after that snooze fest of a quest, we meet a guy at the entrance to the village we were invited to before we get turned away by that guy, because who knows why. Since we can't go into the village, we decide to head back to our base camp, but on our way back, we find this really weird looking blind bear thing called the Doshaguma balls before we actually head back to our base camp. After doing a couple things in our base camp, we decide to head out again, but spot an SOS flare nearby, so we make our way to where the flare was shot from to find a bunch of cats running away from a fire-breathing chicken who we gotta fight to save our friends. After I absolutely mopped the floor with the chicken, I went back to the base camp where I found out I could make a new pair of dual blades with the materials the fire chicken dropped, so my friend decided that he would help me kill the monster until I got my dual blades. But he showed me that I could also chase other monsters that were in my area, so we ended up fighting a Doshaguma, which got me even better dual blades. For the rest of day one, I mainly just finished up on some story quests, which had some of the most delicious, most mouth-wateringly tasty looking food I have ever seen in a video game. Like, this game made me so unreasonably hungry. But after that, Firemaster and I fought a couple more monsters we weren't supposed to yet until I decided to hop off for the night and I would pick it back up on day 2. On day 2, I decided to progress the story a bit more, which meant exploring this really cool looking jungle with a guy named Eric. But unfortunately, Eric has the stupid and got caught by one of my favorite looking bosses, Lalabrina. Although Lalabrina looks really cool, the fight wasn't all too interesting and I kind of just mopped the floor with it. But hey, on the bright side, I got a sick new pair of pants, and I also wanted to mention this is the first boss I wanted to grind the entire armor set for. Even if it wasn't good, I just really liked how it looked. After I finished getting the armor set I wanted, I started grinding the story again, where we meet the silliest little guys in the entire game called Woodwoods. These little dudes just just want to get this soft and shiny fur from literally the worst boss ever. Like, I actually hated fighting this thing. Not because it's hard or anything. It was so dumb. Like, oh, look at me, I'm a monkey that farts and poops on you. Oh. Like, that's just a 0 out of 10 experience. Very unamusing and bad. After we finished that awful excuse of a boss fight, we returned to our base camp before finding a bunch of evidence that the Doshagumas are gonna team up and raid the village. But before we talk to the elder, we gotta find this one guy who's being chased by a bunch of sandworms. So we gotta fight them because I need a new pair of boots. The sandworm was also a pretty easy monster to beat, so I kind of just rolled in and moved on, which is kind of what I expect from the first couple bosses. But after we finished fighting the worm, we talked to Zato, who agrees to plead our case to the elder, who agrees to do as we ask, but unfortunately it's too late and the Doshaguma pack is already in the village. We then needed to distract the Doshagumas with something so they would leave the village, and we decided to use the village's cattle that catches the Doshagumas' attention, making them funnel out of the village quickly. But to be honest, my chest piece is getting kind of old, and I really think I need a new one. So we decided to chase the Alpha Doshaguma because that's obviously the name brand version rather than the knockoff. But unfortunately, the Alpha Doshaguma didn't like when we were hitting it, so they ended up chasing us to, oh hey look, a wall of sand! After the Doshagumas chase me into a sandstorm, they activate my hidden trap card where they fall into a sinking pit with a bunch of sandworms where they are sucked into the abyss to never return. And now all I gotta do is reap my reward. Oh yeah, time to get me some free materials. Alright, now if I get a shovel and dig out the corpses, I can get myself some premium name brand Doshaguma ball clothing. Wait a minute, why is the ground shaking? Like the Giga Chad the Alpha Doshaguma is, he rises from the dead to take me on in a 1v1 while having a turf war with the sandworms. And man, let me tell you, this fight made me feel so epic. This fight was super cool to play since it felt like the sandworms were working with me to defeat the Alpha Doshaguma, but eventually the Doshaguma ran away, so we had to chase it, and that also ended the turf war. And you know, all of this traveling just made me so hungry. Like, I was just so famished, and I was practically withering away on the spot while trying to fight this boss. So I had a little snack before putting the Doshaguma in its place, which is whatever type of clothing I decided to make of him. Hey, editing Delta here. After looking back, I also somehow saw Rey Dau, which is crazy considering at the time I didn't even know it was a boss. After saving the world once again, I returned to the base camp to get dripped out before I talked to this guy. I really hate this guy, by the way, but he tells us Olivia and Eric are missing, so we gotta go find them in the middle of a pretty bad rainstorm. And after we do manage to find them, it turns out they're fighting something.
Don't move.
This giant crocodile looking thing that just came out of some of the shallowest water I've ever seen is called Uth Duna, who Olivia and Eric ran into on their little outing. So as the professional monster hunter I am, I whipped out my dual blades and got to slashing. And to be honest, I was not expecting the boss to be so hard. I didn't quite understand the mechanic at first since I was supposed to break these weird water wings it had before I could do big damage to the monster's main body. But even with that knowledge, I was still having a really hard time, and it basically felt like the boss just had my number and was consistently bombarding me, leaving me little room to dodge, and after a pretty flawless run, I received my first death. Oh. Luckily, after I revived, I had already gotten the boss to pretty low HP on my first life, so I just had to hit it a couple more times before it died, and I think for a first timer, I didn't do too bad against Uth Duna. After we finish fighting, we meet up with the rest of the gang to see if they're doing alright, until we hear a loud roar, so we head back to where we were just fighting to see the White Wraith going to town on Uth Duna before he makes quick work of the monster and flies off like nothing happened. Then, for the rest of day 2, I just made some new armor and I decided I would pick it back up on day 3. On day 3, we find Zato trading with the Wudwud, so we decide to go talk to him, and after we do, he takes us to this place that is completely covered in oil in hopes of maybe finding the White Wraith since we did see it fly off in that direction. After we enter the village, we go to talk to the locals, and one of them tells us about a girl who ran off to get some rare material, and he asks us to go find her since he's worried that they are in danger. After we head out, we eventually hunt them down and find that they accidentally ran into this giant crow looking thing, which although really cool to look at, he wasn't that difficult to fight since most of his moves were pretty easy to read. But with that being said, after I completely decimated the monster, we helped the people we were looking for to get back to the village, which we luckily managed to make it back just in time for the festival they are holding, where something called the Fire Spring ignites and then they make stuff using the Everforge. But for some reason, the fire spring doesn't ignite, and on top of that, Zato informs us that another big sandstorm is coming, which isn't supposed to happen. So we decide to put the mystery of why the fire spring won't ignite on pause and head back to the plains to investigate the weird weather patterns. We make our way through the desert looking for the white wraith since we found out that it makes the weather go all whack when it's nearby, and it seems that we were right on the money with that idea since we find the white wraith fighting a lightning dragon called Rey Dau. And after Nada does something really stupid, we end up having to fight the lightning dragon. But before we do, I'm feeling so hungry. I'm just so hungry, dude. I'm just so hungry. Oh, I'm just so hungry, dude. I'm so famished. I'm just so hungry. That's so good. It does. It tastes delicious. Wow.
You should kill yourself now.
Well, I'm so satisfied. After getting up to some shenanigans and trying my hardest to beat Rey Dau, I actually ended up failing the quest completely. And this is where we get to my first major problem with this game. And it's not that the fight was too hard or confusing. What I actually have a problem with is how awful and difficult the inventory system is. I was so lost and didn't understand why I didn't have any potions, and I couldn't figure out how to get more. I tried buying them, and I also tried crafting them. I also even found my secrets pouch, which I didn't even know you could do. But no matter what I did, I just couldn't figure out how to get more potions into my inventory so I could heal while in fights. Until I spent a couple minutes looking it up online and found that I was supposed to dump all my junk into my tent since my inventory was full so I could pick up potions. Cause me as a noob was supposed to know that, obviously. Besides that, I just found the inventory management really confusing and uncomfortable to use. But with that being said, I used this new knowledge to prepare myself to fight Rey Dau once again, and this time it was a lot more even. Supposed to hit that. Ouch. There we go. I got the space one. Whoa. That was sick, dude. That was cool. I feel cool. I feel like I just killed a friggin'... That was hard. After defeating Rey Dau, I decided to head back to the place covered in oil to go farm some materials for the Rampampelau armor set, since I really liked how it looked, and I found out that out of nowhere at any time, another one of the same boss can just show up, which I wasn't actually expecting. But once I finished fighting the monster, I went back to craft some new gear, and I was looking fresh as a cucumber. To end off day 3, I decided to do one last story quest where we meet this awesome wizard Woodwood, who is probably the funniest character in the entire game, before we defeat this weird snow spider, which it looked pretty cool, but the boss wasn't all too hard, which was very disappointing. But after I harvested the materials, I decided I would pick it back up on day 4. On day 4, I started off by doing another story quest where we explore a new area, and we run into this cool flying snake thing, which was really fun to fight, since I had to disperse like a flock of them so I could fight one at a time, which in my opinion was a really cool mechanic. But after I finished beating up the sky snakes, I decided to goof off with my friends since one of them just recently got Monster Hunter Wild, and we went and played with him until he couldn't join anymore because he had a main quest that he had to do. So I decided to go back to do a main quest of my own. We go back to the Everforge where Werner says he fixed it, but he didn't, because Werner sucks, like big time. Why? Just because he sucks. But after the Everforge goes haywire, a bunch of fire monkeys show up to destroy the village, but they forgot that I was there and I made quick work of them, since I had a little help from one of my buddies and he also helped me farm up a new set of items, so it didn't take as long. But right after we finished fighting the gorillas, we then had to go look for something called the Black Flame, which was hiding in the deepest depths of the map since it really likes the heat. So after popping a cold drink to keep my temperature stable, I went down to decimate this octopus. And what's really funny is I'm sure the boss had all these cool and interesting moves, and it probably could have been really difficult, but I found a way to cheese it, and it just made the boss like 300 times easier than it should have been. And finally, after beating the gorillas and the Black Flame, we finally go and fix the Everforge for real this time so we could celebrate the Fire Spring Festival. And after that, I decided that it was a good place to leave off day 4 and I would continue my journey on day 5. On day 5, I decided to switch it up by using the Greatsword since I thought it would be a fun change, and I also wanted to try out power clashing for the first time since I've never done it. So I went into my next story quest with the Greatsword ready to try it out, and we ended up running into this white Doshaguma since it was like a mutant thingamajiggy. But I was actually able to power clash against it, and I felt really cool. And it turns out that I was also using the Greatsword all wrong, and let's see if you can spot what I'm doing incorrectly. Ouch. So, although I didn't show you much, I'm sure you probably already noticed what was wrong, but I picked up the Greatsword and didn't know that you were supposed to charge all your hits, and you also didn't want to go from your normal attack into an offset hit either, but in my head that was the combo that worked, so I just kept doing it over and over again, and my friend who is a longtime player and a veteran, every time he saw that, I'm pretty sure he died a little bit inside. And it got so bad that after I found the people Nada was looking for and I fought Rathalos with the Greatsword, which it also took a really long time since I didn't really know what I was using and I didn't know I was using the sword wrong, he had to Discord call me and show me how to use the Greatsword so he could avoid ripping his hair out. After he gave me a lecture on how to use the Greatsword, I continued progressing the story to find out all the mutant monsters that are white and purple are just created by Nada's people, but something went wrong and all of them are angry, and the White Wraith is just an experiment gone wrong, which is a huge shocker. So after we get split up from Nada by a bunch of monsters that just somehow came out of an egg, we find ourselves staring at the White Wraith, who we find out its real name is actually Arkveld. But the only way for us to get past it is if we go toe to toe with the monster, and this guy was actually not too hard. But to be fair, after I defeated it, Arkveld just dipped, so I assume it was just a slightly easier version, or like a little taste of what to expect. We head back to the base camp to meet up with Nada and friends, and we set out on a journey to find someone who knows more about the past of Nada's people. And as we search, we find this really cool ice lizard thing that can defy gravity, and we had to do some parkour in between the fighting segments. But the actual boss was really boring to fight in my opinion, so I kinda just fought it and moved on. After we narrowly escape the ice lizard, we make it on top of this mountain where we meet this elf lady who knows a lot about the past of Nada's people. And after she invites us for dinner, I'm sure she probably told us something important and I should have paid attention, but god does that food look super tasty. We finally finish eating and head to this new area to explore the environment where this crazy cool looking wolf monster shows up to fight us, and this guy was decently hard. He was fast and some of his moves were just slow enough to throw you off if you weren't paying attention. And he also had to be one of my favorite bosses to fight so far. And on top of that, right after we defeated him, we got thrown right into the first ever back-to-back hunt where I had to go fight another monster that was called... Anyways, after the... dragged us to its chamber, this fight wasn't really that hard. It definitely lacked a lot of things that I enjoyed about the wolf boss fight, but he wasn't so easy, it was a clean sweep, so I still enjoyed the boss fight regardless. And after I finished that fight, I decided to call it a day and I would pick it back up on day 6. On day 6, I decided to use the insect glaive since I thought it would be a really fun weapon to use because of the aerial combat, and I wasn't really enjoying the Greatsword too much for how slow it was. But after I left the temporary base camp we made to go hunt down Arkveld, we finally managed to find him, and this is when Nada decided killing Arkveld was a bad idea. And to that I say, too bad kid, I need drip. That thing is no longer an animal, it's just a piece of clothing to me. And when I first started fighting him, I was glad to see that he was a lot more difficult than before, and picking the insect glaive was definitely a good choice since it made it a lot more fun to fight him. It also seemed that he had 2 modes, I think, since later in the fight, he had like some red stuff that came out when he did his moves, which was also really cool. And I know I just said that the wolf thing was a really fun boss that I really liked fighting and it was my favorite, but I would be lying if I said Arkveld wasn't my new favorite. I really enjoyed fighting Arkveld. It was probably one of my favorite boss fights, and I didn't even want to script this part because I enjoyed it so much. I just wanted everybody to know that this one was my favorite boss, like hands down. I didn't like any of the other bosses this much, just because of how fun it was. And I don't know if it was because I was using the insect glaive or if it was just because I really enjoyed fighting the boss, but yeah, that's just me coming in to tell you about that. And after having a long fight with them, I finally beat Arkveld once and for all, and yippee! We beat the game, woohoo! Wait, we aren't done, yeah! So it turns out there is actually another boss that is even stronger and more dangerous than Arkveld, and it could end the world as we know it if we don't go and kill it with Nada's necklace that he's also really attached to because it was his father's, and now he has to give it away for the greater good of humanity. So we make our way down to where the monster is located for Nada to make the choice to sacrifice his father's necklace to kill the monster or stand by to watch it destroy the world. Knowing how much the pendant means to Nada, me being the amazingly handsome and cool and chill guy that doesn't really care about anything, I look at the ice cube with the monster in it and say, nah, I'd win, before slamming my fist into it and waking it up to obliterate it. This was it. This was the final boss, the real final boss of the game, and it stood before me and I was ready to take this thing out. And this boss was awesome. It had this really cool mechanic where you had to hit off its scales, but as you did, it would unlock more moves, like some fire moves, and it would have crystal moves and some ice moves, which was really awesome. And flying around with my insect glaive while fighting this thing was also super cool. And on top of that, this boss was also really difficult for me, since as it gained more moves, it got even harder to dodge them, since I would have to look for something new each time it got a new move, at least from what I was seeing. So I struggled a lot with the boss, but I also felt like since I played for the last 6 days, I've gotten a lot better mechanically, so I felt like I was just skilled enough to beat this monster. And after a long hard fight, we finally beat the main story and finished the game. I got off for the night and got back on for day 7 just to goof around and play with some friends. But that was it. That was Monster Hunter for 7 days. From my perspective on the game, I thought it was pretty awesome, and I really enjoyed it. I had the most fun fighting the bosses with the Insect Glaive and dual blades, but I'm sure as I play more, I'll probably try all the other weapons since they're also really cool. And I also look forward to when the new monsters come out later this year. Finally, I also think this game was a great first pick for getting into Monster Hunter. It seemed very noob friendly even though the inventory system wasn't that great. I still thought the game was pretty simple and it was very easy to get into. And I'm glad that I got it. And I definitely plan on playing this a lot more in the future, so if you want to see more Monster Hunter videos, make sure to leave a comment letting me know what your favorite boss is. And for a veteran's perspective, I asked my friend Firemaster about what he thought on the game, and for context, he is a hunting horn main. I think I hated Rise because of the hunting horn changes and how it didn't feel similar to what I'm used to. Then Wilds came out, and gameplay wise, it feels great. I absolutely adore how the weapons feel, and I also just honestly love the game. And I'm also actually enjoying the story of it too. I personally have like 2 gripes with it though. The story quests just feel like they force you into an area and then they make you fight the monster, unlike past games where you had to search for them. And sometimes they don't even allow you to explore till you advance the story. And I'd also just like to say the game feels a little too easy for me currently, but I am hearing some friends who are in the late game say that the game is really difficult and they're fainting and losing fights a lot. I also know that I have a lot of experience and know what I'm doing, and if I really wanted to, I could just not upgrade my armor and weapons if I really wanted to challenge. And I finally know that this is the base version of the game and there's no new fights or DLC that's been added yet, so I know it will get so much more difficult as time goes on. But currently, I'm finding a lot of fun in those difficult fights that I have. But god, do I love Monster Hunter. And a lot of the stuff he said in that paragraph makes a lot of sense. I'm sure for a veteran, he didn't struggle at all with anything I had trouble with, since he has a lot more experience than I do. But it's also good to know that even people who have played the game for years can have just as much fun as people who are new, just like me. And finally, after an entire month of editing and making you guys wait until I finish this video, I finally did it. I finally finished the 7 days of Monster Hunter. With that being said, I would just like to say, please make sure to go down to like and subscribe since we are almost at 10,000 subscribers. And finally, thank you all for watching to the end. I appreciate it a lot, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.